Alan Wake 2 is one of the most unique and special games of last year, in a year filled with some of the most anticipated and renowned games we've seen this generation. While being a bit of a niche title, it placed itself amongst a pedigree of survival horror games as one of the best. From its setting, narrative, performances, visuals, and creative risks, it became clear that Remedy is punching far above its own weight, and continues to push the medium forward with their work. At launch, I played through the entire campaign twice, letting its qualities ooze into my pores like the darkness in its world. And as someone who loves film, I fell in love with the mixed media approach Remedy explored within the game. Like Hideo Kojima or Yoko Taro, Sam Lake deconstructs what a game is and reconstructs it into an experience unlike any other, and this continues within Alan Wake's expansions. Night Springs, which released earlier this year, had some of the most asinine and wildly creative decisions I've ever seen put into a game. And while it may not have answered any questions you wanted it to, it explored a variety of fun and unique concepts that could only be achieved within this medium. It also expands and explores the Alan Wake and Control world in ways that I could barely even describe. And the Lakehouse, the second and final expansion for Alan Wake 2, continues this trend. In it, you play as Kieran Estevez, a Federal Bureau of Control agent who appears within the main game. She's here at the Lakehouse to investigate an altered world event that may have occurred at the facility, only to get plunged into a nightmare unlike anything she's experienced. Paint covers the walls, thin, tall monsters stalk the halls, and a talking painting guides you further below. It has all the hallmarks of a Remedy title, from the video footage within the game, unique diegetic songs, a strong visual allure, and so many documents to read. It also melds the stylistic identity of Control within the world and atmosphere of Alan Wake. Unlike the base game, which forces you down a very linear direction, the Lakehouse harkens back to the survival horror design that started the genre in the first place. There are only 6 floors to explore within the facility, but each one feels so vast and distinct from the rest. Sometimes, you'll need to complete an environmental puzzle to progress through, and other times, you'll have to scrape by with a few dozen bullets and a single bandage as a group of enemies surround you. This enclosed environment constantly changes and confuses you with its structure. This differs from the more typical open-ended environments within the base game. In a way, it feels like going through the Spencer Mansion all over again. Despite its expanded and wide space, you'll often find yourself lost or heading in the completely wrong direction. It's designed to be a labyrinth, an impractical facility that makes you question what's even real. Time after time, I had to do a double take or check my map in order to configure my direction. The narrative themes within this expansion are interwoven into its core with so much depth, from a deconstruction and examination of generative AI, and the metafictional horror of knowing someone else may be in control of your life, to questioning what even constitutes as art. All of this permeates and builds within these 2 hours, creating a substantive mosaic that begs you to investigate it more. While it does fall into some of the flaws of Control, forcing you to read document after document after document, the content and lore within is so rich that it's barely an issue. The same can be said about its story. It doesn't really explain or elaborate more on the plot of Alan Wake 2, but it does expand its world and concepts further, while also hinting at the future. This may be an issue for some people who were hoping for more of an explanation or resolution to the story of Alan Wake, but as they say, it's not a loop, it's a spiral. I also want to commend the technical artists behind the expansion. I love the soundscape of the facility. It sounds so alive, yet equally cold and oppressive. The ambience that rears its head in the quieter moments keeps you uneasy, and the sound design keeps you on edge. I also love the vocal modulations of the painting as it spoke. It sounded kind of like a Dalek from Doctor Who. The shape of a man. One of the biggest surprises for me regarding the expansion was just how difficult it could be. The combat in the base game was never really great, and while I did die a couple of times throughout my playthroughs, I never really had any difficulty with the enemies or the lack of supplies. But the Lakehouse completely flips that on its head. I was constantly running around with low health, barely any ammo, and no healing supplies. It got to the point where I was revisiting multiple locations in order to look for more resources, and restarting encounters because I needed to conserve my ammo. It did work for the most part, but with how many item drawers and boxes that were empty, it would have been nice to have a bit more leniency with its design, especially since I can imagine how some people might get soft-locked. I also had a couple of weird glitches. One of the enemies got stuck walking in place, the same thing happened to me once, and I also found this randomly floating mug. These weren't detrimental to the experience, and the rest of the DLC was practically flawless, but it did take me out of the experience a little. Additionally, I do think that the final boss was a little underwhelming and, frankly, boring. Remedy's never been great at designing bosses, but with how they've continued to evolve over time, I was hoping for a more narratively thematic and unique approach to the climax, rather than the generic shoot 'em till they're dead approach we get here. So when all is said and done, I had a really great time with the Lakehouse expansion. While it may not be as experimental and creatively unique as something like the base game or Night Springs, and while it may feel more like a transitional piece, leaning upon the connective threads between Alan Wake and Control as they prepare for its sequel, the expansion still justifies its existence and is well worth a playthrough. Once again, Remedy takes a risk and delves into some of the most unique and exciting creative decisions I've seen in a minute, and it pays off. And when you consider that Night Springs is included along with the Lakehouse in the digital upgrade, you get 4 to 5 hours of some of Remedy's best work. As long as you go in with the expectation that these explore and expand the world rather than resolve any lingering questions, you're going to have a great time. Thank you all for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you think about the expansion, the future of Remedy, or what we may expect in Control 2. I know they have that upcoming Control spin-off multiplayer game coming out next year, and I'll be sure to check that out for you guys as well. Anyways, I'd love to hear what you think. Take care, guys.